course, we've got you coming to the Fremont Theatre on February 23rd. And I was looking through some of your one of your blogs, and you mentioned you've been to San Francisco a lot, but you'd never actually been to San Luis Obispo.
Not yet. So first time. Looking forward to it very much. Yeah,
and the Fremont's a nice little theater. We've had a lot of acts come through there. And well, first I probably should give a little history. I mean, I know of you and your solo work, and of course your days with Genesis. But the first thing, the name of your tour, it's Genesis Revisited, Solo Gems, and GTR?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. GTR was a band I had with Steve Hackett in the mid-'80s. We had a hit single with When Heart Rules the Mind. We had a gold album in the States from that. So I'm going to do one tune from that. And then I think the rest will be divided between solo stuff and Genesis stuff. So I do the stuff that people remember.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I can't help but notice you just did a live show of the 40th anniversary of the Genesis album, the last Genesis album you played on Wind and Wuthering, and yep. You've got a live in Birmingham special.
That's right. Yeah, Birmingham, that's Birmingham, England, as opposed to Birmingham, Alabama.
Right.
It's the Birmingham Symphony Hall, and it was a very nice show. We've mixed it in surround and in stereo. It's available with DVD, Blu-ray, and it was a really great night. We're actually going to launch it here in London, England, in January. With it's going to be at a cinema. So we're doing the cinema, and it'll be in surround and everything.
Like
Check
a premiere,
out the sound system. Sounds marvelous. Yeah, it's a premiere. Yeah, I mean normally I do live albums, and it's a kind of when you do live albums, it's a kind of escape rather than a release. But this one seems to be engaging my record company, so it will be, it'll be the new album. Meanwhile, I'm working on a new studio album at the same time, but this will be the thing that I'll be touring.
Yeah, and I was just thinking and going to ask, obviously it's been 40 years since your last album with Genesis, and I mean, you're still referred to as a former member, and of course you still play the classic stuff that you played on there, and you mentioned working on a new album. You already put out an album earlier this year, The Night Siren, and
that's right.
What number album is that for you? I don't think I have enough fingers and toes to count.
It might be the 30th solo album I've done. I lose count with these things because there are so many compilations and there are also live albums as well. So, yeah, I mean, in my time, I think I've probably played on about 150 albums.
Wow.
When you count other people that I show up and do.
Right.
So, there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, and, you're going roughly 50 years just, in the music biz, so to speak.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's going to add up. What keeps you going? I mean, you've got, as we mentioned, so many albums. You never really stop, do you?
No, I don't really stop. No, I think it's because I love so many different kinds of music, to be honest. I love rock. I love all kinds of things. I'm best known for the prog stuff, but I mean, I love blues. I also love classical, and I love flamenco, and all of those things. In a way, I've in my time, I've done things in all of those styles, and luckily, the shoulders of progressive music seem to be broad enough to encompass all of those things.
Yeah, you definitely heard all your musical stylings, whether in Genesis or in your solo stuff. Yeah, it is quite diverse. And well, that being said, with all this experience and all this diversity, is there anything over all these years that you haven't done yet and would like to?
Oh, let me see. Oh, probably a whole ton of things. I think, recently what I found was I've been working with a lot of what people now call world music, people from all around the world. That's been an increasing commitment of mine. I have a lot of that, which I think I share with Peter Gabriel, the fact that we're in the same band.
Right.
I think counts for a lot. I still see him from time to time, and so all of that is an interesting ongoing thing. I also share a love of orchestras as well. So there are times when I do shows with orchestra. Sometimes it's a band, sometimes it's the rock band, sometimes it's an acoustic trio. But what we're bringing to the States this time will be the full electric band.
Oh, so it will be a full band. That was my next question.
Yeah, it'll be a full band. The works. Yeah.
Hmm. Now, are you playing more of the theater variety, the sort of more intimate venues? I was looking up and down; they seem to be a lot of theaters. And what sort of experience will the fans get?
Well, right across the world, because we tend to be touring everywhere. In some places, like in London, we've done the Royal Albert Hall, and next year we'll do the Royal Philharmonic. Sorry, not the Royal Philharmonic, it's the Royal Festival. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
Royal Festival Hall. But it's mainly, it's theatres, and it's also, it's festivals. We're also doing the Cruise to the Edge.
Oh, right.
With my pals, Yes, and many other bands, Marillion, a whole bunch. I just do tons and tons of things. We're also doing a South American tour as well, so there's a lot of stuff going on.
As you get older, do you find does it take? Is it more like you're almost like an athlete? You got to pace yourself and get ready, get worked out, and.
Well, I tell you what happens is, when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I was drinking and smoking. I'd wake up with a hangover pretty much every day, and I'd have a shower, bump start my lungs, and then I'd be ready to go on stage. These days, I hardly, do any of that. I don't smoke anymore, and most of the time, I drink kind of. It's a bit like having a sherry with the vicar at Christmas time. You know what I mean? It's a kind of rare event,
right?
That sort of thing. So I'm fitter than I was back then. So actually, it might sound strange, but it's actually easier for me to do it now. Yeah,
giving away some of those vices, if you will, and and
that's
the fact
right.
that
Give that up, and it's not rock and roll, is it? Everyone expects you to be,
the lifestyle,
taking on board the poisons and being Superman at the same time. But I find that something has to give, and it's you have to be very fit to be successful.
Yeah.
So touch wood, I'm doing pretty good.
So when you tour, do you have a pretty well set show, or do the sets change, or how does that work?
Well, we're going to try and celebrate the 40th anniversary of Not Wind and Wuthering this time, but it'll be Please Don't Touch, the album that I did just after I left Genesis, when I worked with Steve Walsh of Kansas,
right.
Richie Havens, Randy Crawford, who was singing with the Crusaders. It was just, wonderful singers. It's different now. The Genesis stuff, we have a singer who does great renditions of all the stuff that was Peter Gabriel's and Phil Collins, and also does a wonderful impression of Richie Havens. But the solo stuff, I sing myself, and we have a harmony team with all of that. So, I could belt through the set that's going to be. There's quite a lot of Genesis stuff, but then there's the solo stuff. It'll be Please Don't Touch Every Day, When the Heart Rules the Mind, Behind the Smoke, El Nino, In the Skeleton Gallery, Rise Again, Icarus Ascending, Shadow of the Hierophant, Dancing with the Moonlit Night from Genesis, One for the Vine, Genesis, Inside Out, again Genesis, Phantom of San Marcis, First the Fifth, Supper's Ready, Great Long Piece,
the
Musical Box,
that's half the show
there. The Volcano, all of that is the set, and there might be more things added to it. We have a new bass player. We're going to be touring with Jonas Reingold this time, and if he's learnt the entire set, and I suspect he might, then I'll say to him, why don't we try this, and then we can have some revolving door songs, because the rest of my band know a whole bunch of other things as well. So,
well, that sounds like quite the variety, and anybody, I can record or put this audio online, and we'll know the whole set.
Yeah, you'll know the whole set, or at least the songs that we're going to rehearse with him. And if he gets the rest of it, then that'll be bloody marvelous.
Yeah, and it's these aren't just 3-minute songs. These aren't chorus, verse, and chorus songs either. No, these are songs that it's hard to busk it. It's not like a 12-bar blues. Much as I love blues, these are tightly arranged tunes, and you kind of have to drill to do it. Before I tour, what I have to do is get up at 6 in the morning and go through this stuff, and by 8 o'clock, I figure I ought to know it. If I can do it when I'm tired, if I can do it when I'm really punishing myself, then I know it's going to be okay. Funnily enough, Steve Rothery of Marillion, my pal, and we've been working together recently on one or two new things, he says he does the same thing. He gets up early. So it means you've got the rest of the day for all the other things you have to do in life, of course. But it means that no one's on the phone to you that early, which is very nice. Well, that's the internet never ceases. Yeah, it's your morning workout, I guess.
That's me. It's my mental morning workout. That's right. Yeah.
Well, you say mental, but I mean, no offense, but you're older than me, and I'm something of a guitar player, but I don't know, my fingers don't move that well in the morning.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, luckily, they're okay so far.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I last looked, it was okay.
all 10 still there and everything?
Yeah, it all seems to be there. I play with nails most of the time.
That's another thing. I was going to talk about your technique.
Yeah. Well, I use nails, and I hardly use a plectrum anymore. I'm not really a pick player, except that I've discovered something in recent years. I did a lot of 12-string work when I was with Genesis.
Yeah.
And later years, I found that I could access more notes, and I was more accurate if I used the nails. But the projection of the note to make it really loud,
right?
I think if you can bring yourself to use a pick again, that creates greater projection of sound. And when I record it, I tend to track it in octaves, so you've got not just 12 strings but 24 strings. And there's something about that. There's something. It's a technique that it works very well. I'm discovering things all the time. Of course, tapping was something that I came up with in 1971. I was doing it on the Nursery Crime album with Genesis. So
right, the giant hogweed and such.
I'm credited with I'm credited with being the first electric tapper on the planet.
Yeah, I was just going to mention. I mean, Eddie Van Halen gets a lot of credit, but yeah, you were years ahead of that.
Well, he credits me with this technique,
good.
And he's acknowledged that. So
as he should.
It's one technique. There are many others, and it's just looking at the instrument in a different way. If you look at the guitar, the acoustic guitar, if you look at it like a drum, if you look at it like a percussion instrument, you'll treat it in a different way. You don't have to play exactly like everyone else. So I guess that's why I got the job with Genesis, because I was treating it like a synthesizer before we owned one.
Yeah, I've always thought that, I mean, obviously you have, your skill ability, but you always brought innovation and, did things with the guitar that I have a friend that tries to emulate. He can do it. I can't. I have no idea sometimes what you're doing, but I think you're quite the innovator as far as guitar playing. Well,
I had some very good teachers, although they didn't know that they were my teacher at the time. So I was listening to, in the early days, Hank Marvin, the Stones, the Beatles, Eric Clapton, Peter Green, Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, and, so many of those guys all played with John Mayall's band, and I used to go and see him every other week. So
the Blues Breakers.
Blues Breakers, yes. And I was also a great fan of Paul Butterfield, because originally I started out life as a harmonica player. 10 years before guitar, I was playing harmonica, and so I was a great fan of his. I spent a little bit of time with Larry Adler as well. He was showing me certain things on the harmonica. Again, after I'd been playing for years and years and years, I think those two players were absolute masters in different fields in a way. Larry Adler, the chromatic player, and Paul Butterfield, the blues player, and the terrific band that he had with Mike Bloomfield and Elvin Bishop. I had a great good fortune to see them in 1966, way back in time, and I do believe that was one of the best bands I ever saw. I think at that time he had Howlin' Wolf's rhythm section, in that mixture.
Right. So you did like a lot of people. You kind of emulated somebody's style. Did you actually meet some of these people and then work with them?
Oh yeah, I've met quite a few of them. But I was also growing up listening to Andres Segovia, so that was classical music was almost like a guilty secret. I thought there would be no place for it in rock and roll, and then rock and roll started to take on board more and more things. I guess more and more people, either they were classically trained or they became classical groupies. So I've got enormous respect for anyone who learns it in the way of having your wrists slapped and all that. But I'm a self-taught player, but I have recorded classical stuff, and I'm proud of that, of having recorded Bach pieces. And it's just music that I love. No one forced me to do it. I just happen to love that degree of fluidity, complexity, and the wonderful lines that Bach came up with years and years ago. In fact, it was really trying to play a phrase from Bach on an electric guitar many years ago that led me to come up with the tapping idea.
All right.
So you might say he was the inventor of that. I thought, I could attempt this on one string.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Bach plays his part.
Yeah, well, it's like you said earlier, you're still learning all the time, or you're discovering, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an ongoing thing, and then it's not just how you engage with your own instrument; it's how you listen to everything. You can fall in love with the sound of instruments you've never heard before, and then there's singing, which is a whole different ball game again, and finding where your own voice sounds at its best. Mm-hmm. Recognizing what you can do. That takes a long time, even though you've been singing for a long time. I've been singing for a long time. But even now, there's aspect of, there's the sweet spot. That works. And then there's the other aspect of, like lots of white singers wanting to sound like Howling Wolf, and it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So then you're thinking, yes, but then there's Roy Orbison, the beauty of the human voice. Mm-hmm. In fact, it was something that Richie Havens said to me years ago when I was working with him in the late 70s. He said, the most beautiful instrument is the human voice. And I said, yours may be, not mine. At the time, I wasn't doing much singing, but I hope he's still smiling down on me, because I'm working on that.
Mm-hmm. I remember we played a lot of Please Don't Touch in my college days, and really? I remember that Richie Havens song. It kind of like, it was like, okay, now the party's over. I think Steve's got us all mellowed out. Let's go to bed. But this is probably
there was
2 or 3 in the morning.
2 songs that he sang on that. He sang "How Can I," which was the quieter one, and then there was the more epic one, which was Icarus Ascending,
right,
at the end of the album. And he sang both of those absolutely wonderfully, because he was just
he's got a signature voice.
He was just the best singer on the planet, really.
Well, that's high praise. Well, Steve, I appreciate you taking the time
Thank
out.
you.
And again, Steve Hackett live at the Fremont Theatre here in San Luis on February 23rd.
Wonderful, thank you. I look forward to it tremendously.